Hello, and welcome back to the Godly Playroom at First United Church in Wetaskiwin, Alberta. My name is Ruth Womack, and it is my privilege to be able to be in this room and to share stories with you. And it is especially wonderful to hear other storytellers like Jackie and Sherry share some of the stories as well. I wonder how you are today. I hope wherever you catch up with this video, the sun is shining, the signs of spring are becoming more and more evident. The snow is melting, there are puddles, and there are birds singing, and the trees are getting a few more buds coming. And all of those things remind us about life that comes out of those cold, barren stretches of winter. And when we look at some of the things that are going on in the world around us, sometimes all we can do is trust and hope that there is new life there as well, already seeded, waiting to start, coming out of some of those places of destruction and barren emptiness. But for now, the most we can do some days is to pray, to share our trust in God, to share stories about how faith can make a difference in people's lives. So I wonder what you need to set down or set aside so that you can be present with us today. Maybe you just need to take a few deep breaths. Maybe before that you might want to find something for your feast later on. You might want to find some art materials. Although I think today's story is going to be a big enough story that we might not take actual time in the video to work with our art materials. I think our wondering might be response enough. But that doesn't mean you can't stop the video, do your response, and then come back and join us. So let's settle in a little bit, maybe roll your shoulders, find that comfy spot on your couch or wherever it is that you watch these stories. And what do you need to be fully present? You know. I can tell you how I get still and ready, but only you know how is best for you. Sometimes we sit in a comfortable position. Sometimes it is to still our body, and then to try to still our mind, to take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, and another one. And another one. Maybe you have a prayer you'd like to start with, or a song. Sometimes we light the candle. We are still in the time of the color purple, in the 5th week of Lent. I wonder if you remember how many weeks there are in Lent that are all helping us get ready to celebrate the mystery that is Easter. Well, let's begin with the candle. Some people find that lighting a candle helps to focus their thoughts, or their prayers. Whenever we begin a story or our times of worship together in the upstairs godly playroom, we also remember the candle for another reason. And so we remember that once there was someone who said such amazing things and did such wonderful things. The people began to follow him. And the more they followed him, the more they heard him talk about a kingdom. He told parables. He made people well. Lives were changed. And wherever he went, people wondered who he was. By the time we get to the 5th week in Lent, there are all kinds of rumors flying around about who this most amazing man might be. But one time when people asked him who he was, he said, "I am the light." The light shines. It grows when it's shared. And despite the shadows around it, the light still shines and still finds ways to share its light. I'm going to put this light back on the shelf so that it's out of the way of our stories today, because our stories are very big. Let's have a look. See where these stories might be, so that when you're in the room and you want to find them, you'll know where to look. They're not on the sacred story shelf for the Old Testament. They're not a desert box story either. But they might be. Oh, I think I see something purple. There is the sacred story for the New Testament. And these stories are told in the godly play way, in the time of the color purple. This is one of those stories we found on that New Testament shelf. And it happens on the way to Jerusalem, in the time of the color purple, that season of Lent, when we are all getting ready to enter the mystery. It is Easter. Purple is also the color of royalty. And there is a king in this story, or in the mystery of Easter at least, but it's not the kind of king that people expected. We are on that journey to Jerusalem. Once every year, the people of God make their way to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of Passover and remember how God brought them through the waters into freedom. Jesus has been to Jerusalem many times for Passover, and he will help show us the way. Jesus and some of his friends were on their way, following that pilgrim's road that follows along the Jordan River, until they came close to a place called Jericho. The crowds came out to hear what Jesus had to say. There was a man in Jericho called Zaccheus. Zaccheus was the chief tax collector, and people did not like him very much. He took too much of their money and kept it for himself. He collected their money as tax for the Roman government, and people liked the Roman government even less. But Zaccheus wanted to come and see Jesus. But the crowds were too thick, and Zaccheus was too short, and they wouldn't let him through. So Zaccheus climbed a tree. And as Jesus passed by, he looked up, and he saw Zaccheus there. And he said, "Zaccheus, come down." And Zaccheus did. Jesus said, "I am coming to your house tonight." And Zaccheus was amazed. The crowd grumbled. What on earth did Jesus think he was doing? Eating with a tax collector? But Zaccheus said, "If I have cheated anyone, I will pay them back 4 times what I have taken. And I will give away half of everything I have to the poor." And Jesus went with him, and they shared a meal together. And then Jesus and his friends continued on their way to Jerusalem. I wonder what happened next. I wonder what part of this story you liked best. I wonder what the most important part about this story is. I wonder if there's any part of this story we could leave out and still have all the story that we need. I wonder what part of this story is about you, or where you are in this story. If you want to pause the video and to do some art response, to do a little more thinking or wondering about this story, you could do that now. But I'm going to put the story materials away, and we're going to put another story out that happens on this road to Jerusalem. And then we might see if the two stories have anything to say to each other. There were some of the crowds that lived in Jericho and Zaccheus. The friends who were traveling with Jesus. I wonder what they thought about having supper with Zaccheus. I imagine they ate in a lot of strange places and with a lot of different people. If you hang out with Jesus, I wonder if they ever got used to that. This story also happens in the time of the color purple. When we are on our way to Jerusalem. Once every year, the people of God would go to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of Passover, to remember how God brought them through the waters into freedom. Jesus has been to Jerusalem for Passover many times, and he will help to show us the way. As Jesus traveled, the crowds continued to gather. And there were many people who followed Jesus, some for a long time, some only for a short time. They wanted to be close to Jesus, and whenever Jesus came close to people, lives changed. Lazarus' life was changing. Lazarus was dying. Lazarus' sisters, Mary and Martha, sent for Jesus. Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus very much, but he did not come right away. And before Jesus got there, Lazarus died. The sisters washed his body, They anointed it with oil and spices to prepare it for burial. And then they wrapped his body in a clean white linen cloth. And they laid it in a cave for a tomb, and rolled a stone across the opening to close it like a door. When Jesus arrived, Martha went to meet him. She said, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me, even though they die, they will still live." Do you believe this? And Martha said, "I believe you are the Messiah, God's anointed." Jesus went to the tomb, and Mary and some of the other crowds followed him. They were very sad. Jesus wept. When Jesus got there, Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. First, Jesus said to remove the stone, and they did. And then Jesus prayed to God and said, "Thank you for hearing me." And then he called Lazarus by name. "Lazarus, come out." And Lazarus did. And they unwrapped him, and he was alive again. Some of the people were amazed that somehow Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead. Some people thought it was a trick. The Pharisees and the priests thought, "We have to find a way to stop Jesus before he changes too many things." This is a big story. I wonder what part of this story you liked best. I wonder what part of this story is the most important part. I wonder if there's any part of this story we could leave out and still have all the story that we need. I wonder where you are in this story. Or what part of this story is especially for you today? I'm going to rearrange things a little bit here so that you can see both stories. And we'll see what those stories might have to say to one another. If you want to pause the video though and go and do some response to this story with your art materials, feel free to do that. And come on back whenever you're ready. So, here are both stories. The road from Jericho that leads on through Bethany and on to Jerusalem. Here is Zaccheus and Mary and Martha and Lazarus. That most amazing person. And some of the people who followed, and some who did not. I wonder whether Zaccheus followed or not. I wonder if some of the news about Lazarus being raised ever made its way back to Jericho. I wonder what this story might have to say to this story. I wonder if you've ever heard this most amazing one call you by name. I wonder what Lazarus might have said to Zaccheus if they were ever to meet. I wonder if Martha or Mary ever spoke to the skeptics and what they might have said. I wonder what those who followed wondered about both of these stories. I wonder if these disciples remembered a tomb that had been closed with a stone like a door when they were in Jerusalem on that first Easter weekend. When another Mary went and heard someone call her by name. I wonder where you are in this great long journey. Or what kind of conversations you're having with people along the way. Oh, it's such big wondering. And so many things we could wonder about life and abundant life and death and new life, which isn't quite resurrection. We know Lazarus would die again, eventually. But in this moment, in this story, he is alive again. I'm going to put the story materials away. And you might want to pause the video and do some more wondering on your own, or take some time with a journal or some art materials to do a little more reflecting or unpacking of this story. And whenever you're ready, come on back. And I think today we will just move into our prayers and share a feast together. Oh, well, there's the house. And the tomb. And the stone. And the water and the oil and spices for preparing the body. And the linen cloth. And the bed. And Lazarus, whom Jesus called by name. And Mary, his sister, and Martha, who called Jesus by many names. And there's Zaccheus, who gave away half of everything he had. And 4 times to some people. And the crowds who were suspicious or angry, but who chose not to follow. And the ones who did. And Jesus, the one we sometimes call Messiah, the Christ, God's anointed, who travels with us on our way to Jerusalem and helps show us the way. And the sycamore tree that Zaccheus climbed so that he too would be able to see. And the way. It always seems to be unrolling before us. In that time of the color purple, this season of Lent, when we are getting ready to come close to and maybe even enter in to the mystery that is Easter. So welcome back. I hope whatever time you took to wonder or create something in response to those stories, you were able to come a little more close to God, to finding your way into the mystery of Easter. I am very ready for a feast time. It's big work telling stories. Big work listening to and wondering. So, before we start though, let's say our prayers together. I wonder, who or what is sitting in your heart today? Perhaps it's the people in your household. Maybe you know someone who's in hospital, or recovering at home, or waiting for some test results. Maybe you have a friend at school that's going through a really difficult time, or somebody who's feeling lonely. Maybe you're somebody who's already out there and enjoying being able to do things again. And so maybe it is good to pause and notice some of those folks who are a little reluctant to join in, and to do our best to encourage them and support them in this time of transition. And we pray especially for the people of Ukraine, the people of Russia, the leaders and the soldiers of many nations. We pray for peace. And we offer our prayers to God in word, in silence, in song. Trusting that we are heard and loved. Remain in the company of God this week. Remain in the company of God. Remain in the company of God this week. Remain, remain, remain. Remain in the company of God this week. Remain in the company of God. Remain in the company of God this week. Remain Remain, remain, remain. Let's feast. There are lots of things to think about in both those stories. One of the things I think that stands out for me is how people's lives changed. Zaccheus' life was changed. Lazarus certainly was changed. But Mary and Martha as well. And all the folks who saw or heard or were there. It's so hard to know sometimes. We can imagine there would be all kinds of rumors going around about Lazarus and what had really happened. A story about Zaccheus would be a little easier to prove because people would actually have gotten some money out of the deal potentially. It must have been very hard for Martha and Mary to bury their brother. The scripture doesn't tell us whether Lazarus was an older brother or a younger brother or in between them. But I chose a smaller figure, and it changed the story for me to imagine Lazarus as a younger boy with his two sisters who had perhaps looked after him for a long time. And I wonder what kind of friendship Jesus had with them. Scriptures tell us that Jesus often went to their home in Bethany. It was just a short walk from there to Jerusalem. Perhaps he went there to kind of get away from the big bustle of the crowd in the city, especially at festival time, just to have a quiet place where he could unwind and be with good friends, relax a little. I wonder if you've ever been with someone who is dying, and what that was like for you. We're a little more removed from it in this day and age. It's not often that the family takes the time to wash the body, although that still happens sometimes. But our nurses and caregivers in homes and hospitals and home care workers, many of those folks have looked after those details. And funeral directors, sometimes even ministers or elders, are the ones who take the time to prepare the body. But there are also people who take time with those who are sad. I've sat with many families and friends that way, and it is always a gift to be present in that time and to be trusted with those deep, deep feelings. And there isn't always just sadness. Sometimes there's laughter and storytelling and wondering about what comes next. Not everyone is afraid to die. Most people don't want to, but sometimes a person is so sick or so hurt that dying is a bit of a relief. Sounds odd, I know. But it is. But I'm still not ready to die just yet. There are lots of things I would still like to do. I wonder what Lazarus did in the next few weeks or months or years. Sometimes we take this life for granted. There is so much beauty and wonder. I don't want to miss out on it. Maybe Jesus is calling me out a little bit too. To get away from the screen or the TV, to get out of my house and go and enjoy the outdoors, to be with people again in ways that feel safe or comfortable for everyone. But to enjoy life for however long it's ours to have, and to trust that God's there. If there was anything in today's conversations or stories that you might like to talk further about, by all means, give me a call, send me an email or a text. We are learning more about ourselves and about the one who is Easter during this Lenten season. And it is big work. Thank you for sharing some of it with me. It's time to say goodbye. And so we'll start with change the light. You might want to get your candle and have a really good look at it. I wonder what you notice about the flame, about the light. Be careful. We know it's hot. We don't need to stick our fingers or our nose in it to know that. But the light, as it is, can only be in one place and one time. But when we change the light, then it will spread out till it fills this room. And it will go with us wherever we go. So watch what happens. Some people miss this part. Until we meet again, God bless, be well, and look after one another.